네, 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 저는 오늘 경희대학교 한국고대사 고고학연구소 그리고 러시아과학원 시베리아분소 고고민족학연구소와 교류협정 체결 기념 강연회 사회를 맡은 경희대학교 한국고대사 고고학연구소 한진성입니다. 오늘 강연에 앞서 먼저 오랜 인연을 이어온 러시아과학원 시베리아분소 고고민족학연구소와 이런 연구 협정을 체결하게 되어서 굉장히 기쁜 날입니다. 그리고 이 강연에 앞서 경희대 한국고대사 고고학연구소
진성 씨 잠깐만 번역할 시간 주세요. 번역할 시간. 예, 번역을 하게 해.
Попросили, да, временный перевод. Это Хан Джинсон, она ведущая второй части нашего мероприятия, собственно, лекционной части. Прежде всего, она всех благодарит за участие в первой части нашего мероприятия, когда очень рада тому, что было подписано соглашение между нашими организациями. Таун, Кесок, Джинсон Си.
네, 네, 오늘 굉장히 기쁜 날입니다. 먼저 이 강연에 앞서 경희대 한국고대사 고고학연구소 강인욱 소장님께서 환영사를 해주시겠습니다.
Okay, let me speak in English because it's our international meeting. Yeah, it's my great honor to participate to organize this kind of very important lecture for Korea and for all Asia too. Today we prepare two special lectures in honor of our memorandum. The first is our dearest director of Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography in Siberian branch, Andrei Krivошапкин. He will talk about the Paleolithic Eurasia and its correlation with Asia. Secondly, the dearest guest, Alexander Ivanovich Solovyov. We are all both of them is my all dearest friend, but today is our dearest guest. He will talk about the Siberia and Asian correlation and Asian network in the medieval times. The Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography is one of the leading organizations in archaeology of Eurasia. So they could talk about their own discoveries for several hours, but we just have 2 hours. So I will give them for 1 hour for a short briefing, and they will show up the perspective, why and how can we cooperate in the field of archaeology, and how about we develop our relationship. So I'm very glad to see you and hear you. And if you permit us, we will record all your lectures and we will upload to YouTube, so that everybody could access to your lecture in anytime, anywhere. So thank you for your lectures. Thank you in advance. Okay. 영어로 다 했으니까 제가요 간단하게 선생님들 그냥 1시간씩 그 아시아하고 그 다음에 이제 역사 시대에 대해서 이야기하시고 저희가 가능하시다면은 나중에 유튜브로 다 업로드를 해서 더 많은 분들이 선생님들의 그 이야기를 들을 수 있게 부탁드린다 말씀하셨습니다. 예, 이상입니다.
Should we start?
네, 영어로 간략하게 다 소개를 해주셨는데요. 첫 번째 강연은 러시아과학원 시베리아분소 고고민족학연구소의 소장님이신 안드레이 크리보샤프킨 소장님께서 친히 발표를 맡아주셨습니다. 소장님께서 그 구석기 연구와 관련된 시베리아뿐만 아니라 동아시아까지 인류의 형성과 전개 과정에 대해서 강연해 주시도록 하겠습니다.
Сибири, но и многим сопредельным территориям Азии. Андрей Накинтьевич, слово вам.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank again Professor Kananuk for inviting me to participate in this seminar. And it's really a great honor for me to be here and to share some of our recent discoveries in the field of Paleolithic archaeology of Eurasia. And I will try to start my presentation. Is it started? Okay, so in spite that my presentation title is Recent Discoveries in Paleolithic of Eurasia, or Central and Eastern Asia, I would like to say some words about our institute in general, maybe to make a kind of brief introduction to the history of our institute and some structures and, let's say, official departments and official trends of investigations in our institute. Just to remind, especially to our Russian colleagues, that our institute has not very long history, but quite interesting. Origin of our institute associated with the academician Alexei Kladnikov, who in the middle of 50th of last centuries organized or established a humanitarian research in Siberia. And only 10 years, almost 10 years later, in 1966, our institute appeared as a combined institute of history, philology, and philosophy. You see that there was no archaeology or ethnography in the title. That's why in 1990, the title Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography appeared for the first time, and it was associated, I mean, identification or separation of Archaeological Ethnographical Institute from others with the name of academician Derevyanko. And since that time, our institute works under this title and conducts, I hope, effective research in the field of archaeology and ethnography, not only in Siberia, but all over Eurasia. And also, I would like to make you acquainted with some official structure of our institute. We have three main departments. One of them, Department of Stone Age Archaeology, led by Professor Michael Shinkov. Another one, Department of Paleometal Ages, academician Vyacheslav Molodin is the head of that department, and Department of Ethnographic Research, headed by Professor Elena Fusa. Aside of those departments, or let's say in a connection with main scientific departments, we have a Center for Multidisciplinary Research, which combines several laboratories, mostly based on natural science, so-called natural science, is opposite to humanities. And here on this slide, you may see main laboratories of our Center for Multidisciplinary Research. Isotopes, where we mostly do our AMS dating, but also some isotopic research focused on identification of paleo diet, migration routes, and so on. Paleo data laboratory, originally based on laboratory for pollen research, but now it extended and conducts much more researches and analysis. Recently appeared in our institute ZooScan laboratory. It's archaeozoology of Siberia and Central Asia. It's an international laboratory in collaboration with the CNRS from France, and this laboratory led by French scientists invited to our institute. Another interesting and important laboratory in our center is archaeology of digital archaeology, or DIGIT, where we try to do all kind of visualization and also try to find new methods to investigate or to research artifacts and to research any kind of connection between artifacts, societies, humans, and so on. And we have traditional laboratories as well, paleoanthropology and dendrochronology. So all of those laboratories work together, and together with the main scientific departments, and together we try to do science here in Siberia, to do archaeology. Another very important aspect of activity of our institute is our educational activity based on existing museums which belong to our institute. We have two museums, one of them like a traditional one with artifacts and stories exposed inside the building, and another one museum, we call it museum under open air. You see some architect structures and monumental artifacts disposed in that museum. It's a huge territory, and we try to use it not only as a museum to put big, huge structures there to keep them there, but we try to organize kind of festivals, any kind of events, try to reintroduce traditional folk holidays. So to show people like a living history, not just artifacts, but try to reconstruct how people lived in those times and how we can still use some maybe old technologies. And another aspect which is also very important, that in our institute we have our own polygraphic center, and one of the well-known product of that center is a journal of archaeology, ethnology, and anthropology of Eurasia. Now it's ranked in Scopus in Web of Science, and it's ranked in the first quarter. One more slide to show you geography of our field research. And you see that for sure, mostly we concentrated or focused on Siberian territories. But since the very beginning, we also started to work outside Siberia together with our colleagues from other countries and other regions of Russia. Here you may see that we have joint expedition in Europe, for example, in France and Montenegro, and also worked in Pacific region. We have expedition in Vietnam, and hopefully we will continue our collaboration to other countries, and maybe I hope we will conduct some joint research in Korea as well, based on signed agreement. So the last maybe slide about our institute in general, just to show you our international collaboration, that we have acting agreement with the 58 institutions from all over the world, not from all countries from the world, but anyway, quite a good number and quite important region where we have joint projects and also have collaboration with scientists from other countries who come to participate in our expeditions. So it was a brief introduction to our institute, and now I will try to talk about my main topic, and also it's a topic focus of my research interest. It's a middle Paleolithic or Paleolithic age of Siberia, and especially of Altai. At the beginning, I wanted to tell about like different regions where our institute works, like Central Asia, Mongolia, Vietnam, Altai. But finally, I decided in this presentation to concentrate only on Altai region, and maybe to answer questions about others, like Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzia, Kazakhstan, and Caucasus, where we also have expedition. But I will try to concentrate on one. And the reason for that is that Altai now is one of the most discussing topic in prehistoric archaeology. And you know why? It's not a question, actually. You know why. It's because of Denisova cave, and I wanted to say recent discovery, but it's already not recent. More than 10 years ago, a new subspecies, human subspecies, was identified at Denisova cave, and since that time, we have a lot of changes. We have a lot of changes in our understanding of human prehistory, human evolution, and we have a lot of changes in our interpretation of different human species interactions, their migrations, and so on. That is why I concentrated on Altai Middle Paleolithic. But not only on these, I don't really want to tell a lot about Denisova cave, because I do hope that everybody knows, even knows new discoveries from Denisova cave, and I'd like to concentrate on another main topic of Altai Paleolithic, a problem of Neanderthals, Altai Neanderthals, and their interactions with the Denisovans and possibly with the modern humans or other human subspecies. So far we know for Altai, we know about three main cultural variants existed there in Middle Paleolithic. So-called Siberia variant, associated only with the Neanderthals. We know Denisovan variant of Paleolithic, associated with the Denisovans. And we have Karabomian variant. We don't know so far what kind of human was associated with that type of industry. Possibly with modern humans, but still it has to be confirmed. So let us talk about Siberia variant, which is no doubt associated only with one human species, Neanderthals. And here, okay, some pop-ups showing you where we have human remains on sites. So we have Chigirskaya cave. Now I will list the main sites which are now under investigation and could be evaluated as key sites for understanding of different human subspecies interactions. So Chigirskaya cave, Strashnaya cave. Chigirskaya cave, we have Neanderthal remains there. Strashnaya cave, we have modern human remains there, but quite recently, around 20,000 years ago. And we have Neanderthal remains about 60,000 years ago there. We have Akladnikov cave, also associated mostly with Neanderthals, but on the top of stratigraphic sequence, we have modern humans. We have Karabom, no human remains. We have Uсть-Karakol site, also no human remains. And last but not least, Denisova cave, where we have Denisovans remains, we have Neanderthal remains, and we have modern human DNA, but no modern human remains. But now you know that even based on DNA methods, we can we can evaluate interaction, and we have much more tools to investigate our past. So I will start with the Chigirskaya cave. This site was discovered a little bit before identifying of Denisova at Denisova cave, so it was found and the excavation started in 2006 there. Here is the location of that cave, and since that time excavations and investigation of that site is under progress, and now we have quite argumented chronology for human occupation of that cave, and you may see that most dates, now we have much more dates, but so far they are not published, but they support dates shown at this slide with more details. So now we can say that people who occupied Chigirskaya cave lived there around 55,000–60,000 years ago. And now mostly we have remains from this layer 6C2, and this one, this layer. Can you see a point here? I'm showing. Okay, so mostly we have artifacts and human remains associated with this layer, and this layer looks like mostly in situ sediments. So we can analyze artifacts and human remains from that layer with a lot of possibilities to reconstruct ancient life and reconstruct technologies, and to do some planographic observations as well. We have remains in upper layer and some remains from below layers. But now we know that there was a kind of destruction, dislocation of artifacts from this layer 6C2. In general, now we can say that mostly we deal with the, in broad sense, with one event of occupation. For sure, it was not 1 day, 2 days. One event, I mean, it was more or less the same community. I cannot say population because population is much bigger, but community. So I cannot say family, but anyway, we think that for, I don't know, maybe 50, 100, maybe a little bit more years, this cave was occupied by one group of Neanderthals. And now we also can reconstruct Paleo environment, and you may see that this landscape was very favorable for hunters for big prey. And it supported, I mean, this favorable situation also supported by our investigation of paleontological remains from Chigirskaya cave, where we can see that people who lived there, the main purpose of them, it was hunting and butchering of big animals mostly like bisons and horses. And who were they? Now we have quite a lot of human remains from Chigirskaya cave, and all of them belong to Neanderthals. It was firstly described by physical anthropologists, but now we also have a good support from DNA studies, and we know that only Neanderthals lived in that cave. And even now, thanks to our colleagues, mostly from Max Planck Institute, Germany, we know that those people, as I already mentioned, they belong to one community. Community, it means that people, they were relatives, mostly relatives between each other, with a different range of relativeness. Even now we have some like first step or first grade relatives like father and son, and so on. And this is very interesting because lithic artifacts from that cave, they look very uniform. I mean, all artifacts look like belong to one technological tradition, one cultural tradition. Here on this slide, you may see the most important, maybe not the most common or most numerous type of artifacts from that cave, but the most important. And later I will describe why the most important. Because here you may see bifacial tools, and what is typical for them, in spite of their different shape, that those bifaces, they are planar convex in their profile. And why it's very important? The planar convex bifacial technology is very common between European Neanderthals, especially between Mikokian tradition from Eastern and Central Europe. When we found this feature in lithic industry of Chigirskaya cave, for sure we started to think about those similarities. Why those tools and Neanderthals, from Neanderthals, Altai Neanderthals, look similar to European Neanderthals. And here on this slide, you will see regions of Neanderthal oikumena, and you will see that here is European center. Here in the middle we have Caucasus, some Central Asian finds, and here now we have Altai province, Neanderthal province. And based on our research, at first it was typical archaeological research based on lithic analysis. We tried to compare Chigirskaya artifacts, to compare them with the Middle Paleolithic artifacts from Altai at first, then from Central Asia, and from Europe. We did a lot of statistical analysis, and finally we discovered that Chigirskaya artifacts, they are absolutely the same as tools from European Mikokian. And after that, it's not just a similarity technological, like convergency or something like that. It absolutely, how to say, like absolutely the same, let's say, easier to say. So we proposed a hypothesis that in Altai, in that special variant from Chigirskaya cave, we have evidence of direct migration of Neanderthals from Europe, of European Neanderthals, and like this, you see, for sure not so fast, but more or less the same direction. And the main problem for sure is that we don't have a lot of sites, Neanderthal sites in between, but it's still ongoing projects. We try to investigate, try to do some research in other regions, especially in region in between of these two ends of Neanderthal migrations. For sure, at the beginning we got a lot of critical responses, but then we were lucky. We got DNA results from Neanderthal remains from Chigirskaya cave, and they showed with no doubts that those were European Neanderthals, absolutely. And what is much more interesting that previously Neanderthals were found at Okladnikov cave, and lithic industry from Okladnikov cave. I will try to maybe to return to the map. Sorry. Oh, wait a second. I will try to return to map. Okay, here. But how to start again? Ah, okay. Okay, so just to understand how those caves are situated in relation to each other. So Neanderthals were initially found or previously found at the Okladnikov cave, and lithic industry from Okladnikov cave associated with Neanderthal remains are absolutely the same like what we have at Chigirskaya. Okladnikov cave was found firstly, and for the long time it was like a unique event for Siberian archaeology because we did not have any sites to compare. Now we have Chigirskaya cave, and we started to find similar artifacts in other caves, like Strashnaya cave, for example, more or less at the same region. And later, Neanderthals were found at Denisova cave. And since the first DNA result of Neanderthals from Altai were done on sample from Denisova cave, so Neanderthals identified at Denisova cave, they got the name Altai Neanderthals. And then our colleagues, they analyzed Neanderthal remains from Okladnikov cave and Chigirskaya cave. And those were different Neanderthals. If we talk in chronological terms, Altai Neanderthals from Denisova cave, they came earlier to Altai. Chigirskaya and Okladnikova cave Neanderthals, they mostly associated with the so-called late European Neanderthals and came to Altai around 60,000 years ago. And genetically, they were different. So now we have a kind of problem how to call Neanderthals from Chigirskaya and Okladnikov cave, because we already have named Altai Neanderthals. Chigirskaya and Okladnikov cave Neanderthals, they also were Altai Neanderthals, but they were different. So it's kind of interesting story. And as I already mentioned, DNA researchers, they provide us with new tools for investigating of our past, but also they give us a lot of new questions. Because, for example, even at Denisova cave, we have different Neanderthals. For example, classical Altai Neanderthals, firstly identified at Denisova cave, differs from I guess you know about hybrid Denisovan and Neanderthal found at Denisova cave as well. So Neanderthal mother of that hybrid, she was Chigirskaya Neanderthal, not Altai Neanderthal. So it was really complicated. And what I tried to show by this presentation, that now in Altai we have a lot of new interesting areas of new studies. For sure, we have a background of Paleolithic research there started from last century, but now we have new tools like DNA research, and now we try to understand in more details those relations between Denisovans, Neanderthals, even different Neanderthals. And maybe if you see one of the last paper about DNA study at Denisova cave, we can say even about 3 Neanderthal populations in Altai, chronologically different and genetically different. So it's very interesting, and really I'd like to invite our Korean colleagues, especially students, to come to us and to help us with finding answers on those questions, how they related to each other. And even we have to think about a much more complicated picture if we imagine the problem of modern human appeal in that region. So it's really interesting, really, how to say, in spite of a long history of research, it's like a new beginning of a new study. So I would like to invite you to participate in our studies, try to find who were those Neanderthals, how they interact with Denisovans, how they interact with modern humans, and one of the main, for sure not the main, but one of the main questions also is whether Neanderthals stopped in Altai or they went further to east. Now we have some possible evidences of Neanderthal occupation or Neanderthal expansion even to northern China, maybe further, who knows? So it's just a beginning. So we'll see, and thank you for your attention. Once again. Okay, so thank you so much. Thanks.
네, 감사합니다. 안드레이 크리보샤프킨 소장님께서 노보시비르스크에 위치한 시베리아 고고민족학 연구소의 간략한 소개와 더불어서 유라시아 현생 인류 연구의 가장 핵심이 되는 데니소바 동굴, 그리고 한국에는 좀 비교적 덜 알려져 있는 그 차기리스카의 동굴의 최신 성과를 알려주셨습니다. 그래서 앞으로 이런 현생 인류에 대한 연구가 조금 더 활발해지기를 기대하며 그리고 이 고고민족학 연구소가 비단 시베리아에 국한돼서 연구를 하는 것이 아니라 한국, 일본, 동남아 등지와도 여러 그 연구 범위를 확장을 해서 적극적인 연구를 하고 있다는 점 다시 한번 확인할 수 있었고 다시 한번 감사의 인사를 드립니다. 네.
За замечательную лекцию, за то, что рассказали об институте и об основных достижениях в области палеолита и перспективах изучения данной тематики также в странах Восточной Азии и Азии в целом. Спасибо большое, Андрей Накинтьевич.
Thank you very much, and maybe some questions from students, because as Professor Kananuk already told that we can talk about our sites for years, I think, but we are limited in time. But if you have questions, I would like to answer. There are some questions in Korean in chat, but unfortunately I cannot read. Very nice writing, but yeah, for me it's just art. But I see at least one question. I can see a sign. It's a question.
네, 질문이 있으신 분께서는 두 번째 강연을 듣기 전에 먼저 자유롭게 질문을 해주시면 감사하겠습니다. 바로 마이크 켜서 말씀해 주셔도 괜찮으시고요. 혹은 정리해서 채팅으로 주시면은 곧바로 이렇게 질의응답 시간을 가지겠습니다. 5분에서 10분 정도 질의응답 시간을 가질까요?
Okay. During their preparing, let me give you a small question. I know that Denisova is one of the interesting and very important questions for hominid in Asia. And I know that your institute now are excavating in Vietnam and Taiwan. So can you explain or your perspective, how do they relate with the East Asia? We know that Denisova will have some correlation with the Java Island, but we also very interesting about their relationship with the Eastern Asia.
Thank you for your question. For sure, we know that in spite that Denisovans were unknown until very recently, actually they were the main population of Asia in Paleolithic time. So now we just started to open those pages, and sometimes not to open, but sometimes we have to re-understand some previous discoveries, especially in China, in other Asian countries. We already have some anthropological remains from those regions. Maybe now we have to look on them in more detail. So not in more details, but from another point of view. So if we talk about works of our institute, you mentioned Vietnam and Taiwan. Vietnam, we started to work there with much more recent Paleolithic period, final Upper Paleolithic. So unfortunately, I think that Denisovans already disappeared from world, at least. We can say this for now. Who knows in future? But later we started to work with the earlier Paleolithic there, and once again it's another subspecies. It's not Denisovans. So in Vietnam we don't work with the possible Denisovan occupation of that region. About Taiwan, it's still how to say a beginning of our project there, and this time it really focused on attempts to find traces of Denisovan culture there. But so far we have good perspectives. You already mentioned known anthropological find from that region, but our work is just in the beginning. We do hope. But also we know that we already have Denisovan DNA and Denisovan remains from that part of the world, from Tibetan plateau, from China. So Denisovan story I cannot say just started because it's finished much earlier, but opening the draperies covering the history of Denisovans, that process just started. Thanks.